the military's top-secret weapon, Project Shadow, was stolen from the military base located on the deserted island in the southern seas. This incident increased worldwide terrorist activities. Sonic the Hedgehog was arrested. The adventure for truth leads to the incidents that shock the entire world. The story takes our hero Sonic from the Earth and into outer space. Sonic Adventure 2, Hero Side Story. Farewell, Sonic. Forever.
Heh, yeah, right. Well, with the success of Sonic Adventure and the temporary success of the Dreamcast, a sequel would make sense. Sonic Adventure 2 did have an interesting development from what I remember seeing. I'll get into it much more later, but first, let's get to the story. And, luckily for me, there are only two stories to deal with. Much like with my SA1 review, I will try and summarize this in chronological order as best I can. Sometime after his defeat in SA1, Eggman breaks into Gun's secret prison island in search of an old project his grandfather, Dr. Gerald Robotnik, had created. It's interesting to me because this is the first game that officially makes his name Eggman in all territories. Though they reference that in America he was originally Robotnik later on. In fact, this is the first time that they kind of reference both names, with him fully being Eggman in this game, but acknowledging that he is a part of the quote, Robotnik family line. Anyway, the project that his grandfather was working on is apparently a black hedgehog. This plot point is kind of weird to me. Gerald worked on this project 50 years ago, so he couldn't have based it on Sonic because Sonic wouldn't have been alive then. I think by Heroes he's canonically 15. Though one possible explanation is he based it off of the mural of Sonic fighting Eggman that was in Sonic 3, so who knows. That being said, this hedgehog calls itself Shadow and tells Eggman that he will grant his wish. Probably thinking that Eggman is his grandfather or something. They do have very similar mustaches. When Eggman questions him on this so-called wish, Shadow just tells him to bring the Chaos Emeralds to the Space Colony Ark, where hopefully he'll explain further. I don't know, this hedgehog is pretty shady. Ah shit, that was not intended, I'm sorry. Hilariously, Gun ends up capturing Sonic after confusing him for Shadow, and tries to take him to Prison Island before he escapes the helicopter they have him in. I'd be surprised at Sonic surviving the fall, but he survived way worse in earlier games. I'm more impressed at the fact that the dude rips a blade of the helicopter and uses it as a snowboard as he surfs through the city. In the meantime, Knuckles is arguing with Rouge over ownership of the Master Emerald. It is Knuckles' emerald, but of course Rouge, being a jewel thief, wants to take it for herself. Eggman eventually swoops in and tries to take the Master Emerald, with Knuckles immediately shattering it, causing Angel Island to fall back into the ocean. Or at least that's what I would say if they actually acknowledge Angel Island in this, but Knuckles' whole backstory kind of gets swept under the rug for most of these games. Honestly, I was both surprised and kind of giddy when they even referenced the Master Emerald and Angel Island in Sonic Frontiers. And we won't get to that game until God knows when. Anyway, back to Sonic. After fighting his way through Gun's troops, he catches a glimpse of Shadow before he uses Chaos Control and disappears. In the confusion, Sonic is captured again and fully taken to Prison Island. I guess he just so enamored by the fact that Shadow technically can run as fast as him with this ability that he just doesn't try escaping again. I swear, the more I think of this story, the more weird the plot holes end up being. Tails, learning that Sonic has been arrested, goes to break him out. I guess with that new mech of his, he should be able to do it fairly easily. Eggman, at this time, returns to his base in Sand Ocean and sees a news report showing that Shadow has stolen a Chaos Emerald, with the news reporters falsely claiming that it was Sonic. I'm going to assume these news reporters think he must have dyed his quills black or something, because they have a close-up of Shadow clearly showing that he doesn't even really look like Sonic. Hell, I'm gonna admit this now. I played this game with a retranslated script from the Japanese version with the Japanese voices, and even in that version, they still think it's Sonic. I'm gonna chalk that up to the fact that in this world, for the longest time, everyone only knew that Sonic was the only hedgehog with powers like this. And Gun is covering up Project Shadow. It's a long-running theory that the only reason that people believe that this is Sonic has to do with Gun covering up the story, so they don't have to reveal anything about Project Shadow. That being said, this is still a bit of a plot hole, and it's not as bad as some of the others, but I have to bring it up. Anyway, Rouge infiltrates Eggman's base with directions from Gun to learn what she can on Project Shadow. Didn't know she was working for Gun, which makes me a bit curious about why she was bothering Knuckles with Master Emerald and such. This ends up leading her to joining Eggman and Shadow, mostly as a sort of double agent, in hopes of getting any information. It is odd to me that they have her doing this, seeing as Gun knows of the project, but if I had to guess, they just want confirmation that Shadow is the project that Gerald was working on, and not like something crazy like a weird giant space lizard. Who would think for that? Once gaining their trust, Eggman, Rouge, and Shadow return to Prison Island after Rouge tells them that there are Chaos Emeralds here. Eggman tasks Shadow with setting bombs to destroy the Prison Island, while Rouge gets the Chaos Emeralds, and Eggman goes and creates a distraction. Suddenly, Amy appears, she somehow found her way onto the island and mistakes Shadow for Sonic before realizing that Eggman is here. Before Eggman can get rid of her, Tails steps in and fights him as Amy goes to break Sonic out of prison. I would make a comment about her mistaking Shadow for Sonic, but I think canonically she is supposed to be colorblind, so I can kind of understand her mistaking the colors at the very least. I'm more surprised that she somehow found her way onto Prison Island, because at least Tails has an excuse. Once broken out, Sonic runs through the island, I honestly don't remember why, before eventually running into Shadow, leading to not only a fight, but one of the most iconic lines from the franchise.
You might know everything I'm going to do, but that's not going to help you, since I know everything you're going to do. Strange, isn't it?
That's not the right clip. Naomi remind me later to label these clips. Anyway, after the scuffle, Eggman sends Shadow a quick warning telling him that the island is about to blow. Sonic, overhearing this, quickly runs to get Tails and Amy, while Shadow uses Chaos Control to get Rouge, who had gotten locked in the vault where the emeralds were hidden. After heading back to the Ark, Eggman uses the laser that the Ark has equipped to destroy half the moon as a threat to get the Earth to make him the de facto leader of the planet. And he gives them 24 hours. Unfortunately, the planet doesn't really take him seriously, despite him blowing up half the fucking moon. I'm pretty sure he's serious. Like, bluff or otherwise. He has the power. Tails and Amy, having escaped Prison Island on Tails' new plane, contact Sonic and tell him that Eggman must be using the Chaos Emerald in order to power something capable of blowing up half the moon. Unfortunately, not knowing where to find him, they at least are able to track a call that the Doctor sends the President before Tails follows him, and both Sonic and Tails hop into his limo before tracing the call up to the Space Colony Ark. Probably not Sonic's best move, considering he's technically a wanted criminal at this point, but I guess if he can stop Eggman, the President's willing to pardon him. With the knowledge they have of where Eggman is, they, along with Amy and Knuckles, head to Eggman's hidden base in the desert. In the meantime, Shadow tells Eggman that he will need the remaining emeralds before the planet will fully listen to him, and Rouge tells them that Tails was given one for saving Station Square in the last game. Eggman then has both Rouge and Shadow track him down and get the emerald. Luckily for them, Tails is on his way to Sand Ocean. Sonic runs around Eggman's base looking for some way to make it to the Ark before finding it, unfortunately needing a key, with Knuckles then searching for the pieces of the key, before he himself is attacked by a ghost. You know, I'm more just wondering why the key is broken into pieces, but it must be a security measure that Eggman has, I guess. Before they can take any kind of transport, however, Eggman arrives and says he will get rid of them and take Tails' emerald before showing them a new egg golem. Sonic ends up destroying the device that Eggman created to control this golem, causing both Eggman and Sonic to fight it. Once it's defeated, Sonic and the gang take the rocket that's hidden here up to the Ark. Which, I need to bring this up. I know Eggman has a teleporter to the Ark, so he can easily use that to get there. I know a ton of people bring up the fact that he wouldn't need the rocket, but I'm wondering if maybe he used the rocket to go up to the Ark and set up this teleporter. That or this rocket is a secondary option in case the teleporter doesn't work or something. I'm just trying to say, there are a few reasons I can see him having one just to be safe. Hell, worst case scenario, this base might originally be from the people who first made the Ark before a teleporter was built. Anyway, the rocket ends up hitting an asteroid, which causes it to release all of the Master Emerald shards that Knuckles was storing in the storage area? I don't know how these space shuttles work. Knuckles tells them to let him off so he can get them, and Sonic and him end up fighting over the controls before they seemingly crash into the Ark. Don't worry, they clearly survive, with Knuckles more or less bailing to get the Emerald Shards. Once they land, Tails explains that he was able to make a replica Chaos Emerald and tells Sonic that if he can get the fake one where Eggman has the others, they should use it to overpower the cannon and destroy it. The only way to do that would be from the inside, as the outside is seemingly impenetrable. Tails going to destroy the power generator, with Sonic racing to the control console for the cannon. before he can put the fake emerald in the machine, Eggman tells him that he has Amy and will kill her if Sonic doesn't meet him in the research facility. As he's heading over, Knuckles and Rouge fight outside over the emerald shards. Rouge yells at Knuckles over not giving her the shards or something before slipping and falling right before Knuckles catches her. She gives him shit for this, thinking he was only doing it to touch her hand, with Knuckles explaining to her that it was only to make sure the emerald shards didn't get destroyed. She later gives him the shards that she had collected, and Knuckles repairs the emerald before somehow sticking the emerald in his hammer space where all Sonic characters keep their rings. And for the people watching this that don't know what TV Tropes is, he has a point-and-click inventory. Funnily enough, I also have one. It's where I keep my most important items. Moving on. Once Sonic makes his way over to the research facility, Eggman tells him to give him the Chaos Emerald, which Sonic starts to give him the fake one right before Eggman traps him in a capsule. I've always wondered why the Ark has this, but if I had to guess, it was intended as an escape pod, especially as we see the same capsule in Shadow's flashback being used essentially for that purpose. Once trapped, Eggman shoots Sonic and the fake emerald into space, causing the capsule to be destroyed. He then tries to take the emerald from Tails, leading to a fight where, canonically, Tails does beat him. This is funny to me because you can win the fight as Eggman, only for him to almost immediately collapse on the floor in defeat. It's just humorous to me. Not that this really matters much, as Eggman is able to get the emerald anyway. In the meantime, Knuckles senses a strange energy before a bright light appears and drops Sonic in front of him. I guess God didn't want the speedster, and Hell said no thanks. Surprisingly, he was able to use the fake Chaos Emerald and Shadow's Chaos Control, despite the fact he only ever saw Shadow use the ability once. Hell, Tails told him that this emerald would be weaker than the other ones. I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I hate this plot point. It just feels like a plot hole. At least the negative energy thing from the last game kinda made sense, even if it was an asshole. Here, again, this is a plot hole. How did he learn to do this after seeing it once? I can overlook him using the fake emerald. Hell, I assume that he was aiming closer for the cannon's core because that is his goal, and using the fake might be why he missed. It's just odd to me that somehow he knows exactly how to use this ability despite never even attempting it beforehand. I mean, if I was writing this, I would have him at least trying to use the ability before this one scene. It would make a little bit more sense cohesively anyway. Speaking of Shadow though, we fight him on our way to the cannon's core. Funnily enough, we even see Sonic use Chaos Control here if you're playing as Shadow. So I guess the scene of him practicing it, despite the fact he doesn't use this again until Sonic 06, is technically here. I know he can easily run as fast as the Chaos Control can normally take him, but he could easily use it in emergencies, and we never really see that after this game. Anyway, once kicking Shadow's ass, Sonic tosses the fake emerald into the barrel of the cannon, causing it to explode, before calling Tails and Amy on the walkie-talkie to let them know that he's still alive. I guess the outside wasn't fully impenetrable, as He basically did a Looney Tunes and stuck his finger in the gun. Unfortunately, as Eggman puts the final emerald into the cannon's control panel, the arc doesn't start charging up the cannon, but instead, it falls to Earth. Looking to see what's wrong, he ends up finding a video from his late grandfather explaining that he rigged the arc to crash into the planet as revenge for killing his granddaughter, Maria. This is the wish that Shadow was talking about at the beginning. He is willing to wipe out the Earth as revenge for losing his friend 50 years ago when Gunn stormed the Ark. I think it is implied that Gerald Robotnik did screw with his memories to make him try and destroy the Earth. Of course, everyone else sees this as a problem, seeing as they live there, and it doesn't help that they are also in the Ark with no real way of escaping. With no other option, Eggman decides to work with Sonic and the gang to try and stop the Ark from crashing into the Earth, wiping out all life. They plan on getting the Master Emerald to where the Chaos Emeralds are so they can use its power to stop the Ark from crashing, with each character doing what they can to stop the inevitable. Once they find where the emeralds are, because I guess somehow the emeralds moved to the engine room or something, Knuckles and Sonic rush to what looks like a replica of the Master Emerald altar from Angel Island. Before they can reach it, however, a giant lizard teleports in and stops them. This is the prototype of what would eventually become Shadow, which, funnily enough, was teased earlier. As Rouge was looking into Project Shadow, you do see a small image, so it doesn't fully come out of nowhere. So, I guess that joke I made earlier actually meant something. I guess if Gerald used the mural of Sonic fighting Eggman for inspiration for Shadow, he used the mural of Chaos fighting Sonic for the Bio-Lizard. Just a hunch. Speaking of Edgy the Hedgy, he's actually brooding in the research facility while everyone is running around trying to stop the Ark from crashing. As far as he's concerned, his job is done. This is when Amy decides to finally have actual plot relevance outside of breaking Sonic out of jail and tell him that maybe his memories of Maria weren't the real memory. This somehow triggers something in him for him to remember what she actually told him, which is,
for all people who live on that planet, give them a chance to be happy. Let them live for their dreams. Shadow, I know you can do it. That's the reason why you were brought into this world. Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog.
with this, Shadow races to the cannon's core and tells Sonic and Knuckles to run for the altar while he fights the Bio-Lizard to distract it. Once reaching the altar, Knuckles uses the Master Emerald to stop the Ark. But the Bio-Lizard takes note of this and uses Chaos Control to attach itself to the front of the Ark in an attempt to finish the job. I'd be more upset about this creature using this ability, but at the same time, I kinda don't care. It makes more sense to me here than Sonic using it, because this is a prototype of what would eventually become Shadow. Seeing this, Sonic realizes that there's only one way to fully stop this thing, and that is to go super and try and push it back before the Ark can hit the planet. So he and Shadow jerk each other off to go Super Saiyan and fight the Bio-Lizard. And for anyone thinking that I have my mind together, they do make the motion of jerking off. Why did they shake their fist? Like, they've never had to do this before. Maybe it's because they're both going super and they have to share the power, but Holy crap, it's funny to me and I just can't unsee it. And being honest for a second, this is genuinely one of my favorite boss fights in Sonic, as Live and Learn plays in the background. Granted, much like Chaos in the last game, all we really have to do is ram into the Bio-Lizard, but here it feels like more of a fight, with the Bio-Lizard shooting lasers and even putting up a defensive shield of balls, trying to get you to stop. It's a bit more climactic. Plus, one of the things that this boss fight has over the other is once you hit the boss with one hedgehog, the game switches to the other so that they can grab rings and keep the super effect up. It just feels badass. I don't really have many notes on this. Though the points we hit are basically giant coils on the Bio-Lizard. Yeah, that's just a bit gross. Once finally defeating the Bio-Lizard, Sonic and Shadow speed towards the Ark with the remaining power they have and used a supercharged Chaos Control to send the Ark back to its regular orbit around the planet. This ends up with Shadow, I guess, using too much energy and falling back down to Earth, despite Sonic being perfectly fine. Guess Sonic just had more rings or something. Damn, plot armor. Sonic could have at least grabbed him before he fell to Earth. Anyway, with the day finally saved, Sonic returns to the Ark and tells them that despite saving the planet, Shadow had to sacrifice himself to do it. He tells Rouge that what he did in the end was brave, and he should at least be remembered for that, if nothing else. Hell, everyone here has a pretty nice scene as they look back on the events that transpired. And I guess the charges against Sonic and the gang are dropped as a thanks for saving the planet in some way. Eggman and Tails have a, honestly, nice moment where Eggman tells him that he looked up to Gerald when he was a kid, and that's what made him want to become a scientist in the first place. It's sweet for a character that's canonically a villain. Knuckles asks Rouge what she plans on doing now, with her telling him that she's gonna give up jewel hunting as it's too much work for not enough pay. Sonic thinks about how Shadow was created to be the ultimate life form, before telling Amy that it's time to go home. Before he finally leaves, he takes one final look outside and says, "Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog." And that is Sonic Adventure 2. Now, before I get on to my thoughts, I do want to bring up the development of this game. Firstly, Tails wasn't originally going to be playable. It's one of the reasons, at least to me, why his gameplay is a mirror of Eggman's, complete with him being in a mech. It is odd considering I thought his moveset from Sonic Adventure 1 was fine, but I guess it was just easier to add him if all they had to do was copy Eggman and just change the model. To be fair, I personally don't hate how he plays, but it does feel a bit odd. Speaking of playable characters, I think we would have only had maybe 4 or 5, as opposed to the 6 that we have in the final game. They were already only going to have 3 gameplay styles, and going back to Tails, he probably would have had a role similar to Amy's, where he was important to the story, but wasn't playable. Shadow went through a few design changes, as well as him at one point looking much closer to Sonic, only sporting a missing eye and a different color scheme. Honestly, I really do like his design here, but I enjoy the version we got a bit more. Granted, if they stuck with this design, it would make the military confusing the two a little more believable. That being said, there is a mod for the PC version that adds a version of Shadow based off of his original concept design, so if you want to play as this version, you easily can. Now, as I alluded to earlier, Sonic Team streamlined the gameplay to only 3 styles from the last game: the speed sections, the shooting gallery sections, and the emerald hunting stages. While it is odd that Tails is confined to a mech for his sections, I do enjoy the shooting gallery levels, similar to E102 Gamma's levels from the first game. The high speed levels from SA1 return with Sonic and Shadow, and they are just as fun for me. The only sections that I have a bit of a problem with are the emerald hunting stages. These were some of my favorite sections in the last game, and they made them much more tedious here. Firstly, you could be spending upwards towards 10 minutes on a single stage because you can't find a single emerald shard, with the hints not helping in any way. Plus, the fact that the radar that worked perfectly fine in the last game suddenly only reads 1 emerald shard at a time. You could be right up to an emerald shard and never know it until you get the shard before it in a sort of list. It's annoying to a point that every time I play the game, I go out of my way to use a cheat that makes it so any shard I'm near will be noticed by the radar, just so I can get through these stages a little quicker. This is not something that ever needed to be fixed, and I will at least give them credit. I enjoy the emerald hunting stages they added because they're fun exploration stages, but if I'm spending half of my time in this game trying to find a single emerald shard because the hints are telling me to look at the bottom of a planet when it's on the top, it's not fun. Outside of the main game, there are new multiplayer modes which you can race a friend in the Shadow or Sonic stages, or have a pseudo deathmatch with the mech characters, or even be the first to collect an emerald. They even add characters to play in these areas, with you able to play as Amy, Tikal, Chaos Zero, and even 2 Chow mechs. The few times I've had a chance to play these, I've enjoyed them. Hell, there's even kart racing based on the 2 levels in the game that actually had you in a car, and in the Dreamcast version, there was DLC to add more cards, including one based off of Opa Opa from Fantasy Zone, I think. Look, despite my problems with this game, this is genuinely one of my favorite games from what I like to refer to as the adventure era of Sonic games. While the story can be a bit cheesy at times and has many plot holes that, honestly, even in the best versions, are a bit glaring, it is personally what I want for a more serious Sonic story, and gameplay is what I wish 3D Sonic would be, outside of the problems with the emerald hunting stages. Just go back to SA1's emerald hunting stages, and for me, it'd be a perfect 3D Sonic game. Unfortunately, after Sonic 06 failed critically, they ended up dropping the adventure-style gameplay. But for these first 2 games in this style, I feel like they found their footing. Let's just hope next time in our reviews, they're able to keep them up. Now, normally I'd say something like, next time we will need a few heroes, as a tease for the next game that I'm doing. But I want to say that the Sonic Heroes review might be a while. I'll explain when I finally get that one out, but beforehand, I'm going to take a bit of a detour. Don't worry, it'll still be Sonic, but that's all I'm going to say for now. So, I guess I'll see you guys then.